Hey everybody, welcome to a very special episode of a Sidequest episode of the Zamora 2-Player Podcast. I am your player one once again, Garrett Zamora, and I am joined by a super special guest, MarcoMeatball. Welcome, Marco.
Thank you. That's my real name, of course.
Yes, obviously, yeah.
Marco
I looked
Meatball.
it up. Marco, you are a content creator, opera singer, video game music aficionado. You have tons of Let's Play videos, music analysis, and reaction videos. One thing you do that I love is when you show video game music to someone that doesn't play games or know much about games. I love doing that too to people. And one thing I got to say about your music analysis and why I love watching those is I'm a musical dummy. I don't know anything about music, at a theory level or anything like that. And when you give sort of breakdowns of, songs or themes from games or stuff, it's like, I know I love this song, but I'm not sure like subconsciously why I love them. And you do a really good way of breaking that kind of stuff down. And it's like, you're sort of teaching me, oh, that's why I love this song because of these, patterns or whatever things that they're in there. So super stoked to have you on the channel, man. Love your stuff. And especially your music analysis video. So welcome.
I really appreciate that. It's a funny thing because sometimes when I'm talking, I feel like I'm saying the most obvious things possible. Like, oh, listen to the cascading violins. And it's like, well, yeah, of course they're cascading. That's exactly what they're doing. But like, it's hard. So that means a lot. I mean, it's sometimes I'm literally sitting here and like, do I just sound dumb? So I really appreciate that. I'm helping in some sort of way because ultimately music is such a beautiful way to express ourselves and to connect with the things that we love, and also to connect beyond those things and really connect to our feelings. And that's ultimately the purpose of music. So I'm glad that I can sort of Sherpa in some way.
Sure. Yeah, you're my musical Sherpa. That's what I'll call it. Yeah. Right on. We're just gonna chat a little bit about video game music related topics. I have some questions that I'd like to ask you. We'll just have a fun chat. My brother and I have done, I think, 2 entire podcast episodes that were about 2+ hours long about Final Fantasy music specifically, and then another one that was just about game music in general. So yeah, you're in good company on this podcast.
Yeah. Let's do it.
So first, pretty easy question to get us started. What would be your earliest memory in which you really took notice of like video game music as more than just like background to what you're playing?
I mean, I think so. It's interesting because there's 2 definitive moments in my life that define my entire life pretty much. And I often thought that this was kind of weird because I was like, video games have defined my entire existence, like since I was 7. And so is that like, okay. And are other people like me? But when we first immigrated to the United States from Italy, I received a Super Nintendo and from my grandparents. It was literally the first gift. They handed me this machine and I was 7 and I was like, what is this? And I didn't speak English and all my cousins were around and they all spoke English because they grew up here and I was in Italy. And so it was a real, I have this visceral and just this memory, a visual memory of sitting in front of their old 1980s big box tube TV playing Super Mario World. It was nighttime and everyone was just like, my cousins were around me and I couldn't speak English. And that was a visceral moment where I don't know. I remember how bright the screen was and the beautiful colors of Yoshi's, the first level of Super Mario World. And so that like in a weird way, like that's actually more powerful to me than like my first musical experience with a game. But I would say that the first game that I really started to like clue into music was probably Final Fantasy VII, which I could go on a happy tangent about how it's over milked right now and excessive. And I'm so tired of hearing everybody talking about Final Fantasy VII. But at the same time, like it was a pivotally important piece. And I'm starting a series actually on my channel called Music That Moves Us, and the first episode is my episode, and I asked the community to list out their favorite songs and why. And essentially,
Sure.
it's like a one-way conversation, but they filled out a form, so it's a two-way conversation.
Yep.
Uh, and the piece that I picked was One Winged Angel, and
Oh
that
my.
was really yeah, of course, right.
We're gonna talk about that song later.
It's a little cliche to say that it is, but I also think that it's completely fair because it's such a legendary piece of music. And
Yeah.
yeah, I think what's really amazing about it to me is Uematsu like was able to derive like essentially it's pseudo. I mean, it really is like pseudo actual classical music, and the fact that he uses the Rite of Spring in there, the fact that he uses the lyrics "Estuans imperitus ira menaventi," that's from Carmina Burana. So like these things, it's crazy how so many people that have played this game and experienced One Winged Angel have actually, like, without even realizing it, been exposed to hardcore classical music and classical like underpinnings.
Yeah.
And so I didn't know that at the time, obviously, but that was
Sure.
why it elicited such a profound sense of fear. And I still remember that moment that I Knights of the Round Table, Bizarro Sephiroth, and out of nowhere comes this thing, the second phase of Sephiroth. And yeah, so I would say that that's probably the most meaningful. And then from then on, Final Fantasy, it was a done deal for me. So
It is absolutely a running joke on this podcast that my brother and I cannot get through one episode without somehow bringing up Final Fantasy VII. So thank you for keeping that alive.
Yeah, you're welcome. My pleasure.
But yeah, no, I mean, it's that is like for me, it was Final Fantasy VI, and it was it was the opera scene in six because the music was such a part of the story. It was like not just background. It was like, no, you have to learn the lyrics to this song, and it's like part of the plot. You know what I mean? And it just, I don't know what it was for. I would have been like 10 years old or something when we were playing that, or a little younger, and it just put the music in the forefront, and it just like it made it such a bigger part of the whole package for me, right? And then we just Final Fantasy like defined me and my brother. So yeah, we obsess over the soundtracks too. So
it's so interesting to me because Draco and Maria and that whole opera sequence, that and Parasite Eve's opera scene, I can't think right off the top of my head how many other opera moments there are in games. Like there's a couple, but beyond those two. But like I think like obviously Final Fantasy VI is fundamentally like that whole section, which I actually am working through a musical let's play of Final Fantasy VII soon, or six soon.
oh, nice.
So I actually haven't played that part in game, but I've obviously seen it. I've broken it down on the channel. And like if is it a real opera?
Yeah, I've watched that video.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I'm familiar.
I'm really proud of that video. But Parasite Eve is the other big one that has opera in it, and of course,
I remember that.
so other than those two, like I really can't think of anything else where I'm like,
there's kind of
opera.
There's like a stage play with a musical element in Final Fantasy IX, where they're putting on the theater troupe. It's not quite an opera.
It's more like Shakespeare. Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, but that's a good point.
Like, there's also the scene in Assassin's Creed 3 when you're playing as Hatham, when he goes to the theater and you have to like climb up you have to like climb the mezzanine. And anyway, yeah.
Yes, I look forward to you experiencing that in game. The opera part. Yeah. So one thing that as I sort of alluded to, like, for me, music can play a really big part in like furthering or enhancing a game's narrative. And I definitely subscribe to your feelings on like, you don't need context to enjoy the music, which I totally agree with.
Oh God. Okay.
Yeah. We won't go down that rabbit hole, but cause like we're on the same side on that one. But I do feel like it can, the other way around, it can definitely enhance the game that you're playing and enhance the narrative and the storytelling. What elements do you think would you say are most important in a piece of music that would help achieve this? To like what parts of the music help further tell a story, and if you can think of one that's particularly stands out top of mind for you.
I mean, I think well, this is so basic, but rhythmic propulsion and melodic motion are two of the most obvious, and you kind of need both for the most part. I mean, every piece of music has rhythm and melody for the most part, unless it's ambient, but even ambient track anyway. um so for me, it's like so there's a couple ways to look at it, um without getting too heady. So rhythmic propulsion is perfect when you are in a battle or in a situation where the stakes are really high, or when you're in a situation that is dire, or there's for that forward momentum can really propel us forward and make us feel like, okay, we need to stand up and take action. Where on the flip side, you've got melodic music and music that's melody focused is almost always it's trying to convey an emotion. And this was something I didn't fully understand, because in opera, everything I sang was melody. Yes, there are rhythmic sections, and I have to
True.
follow rhythm and the general patterns of how things go in the score. But melody is actually what sells it to the audience. How one ascends up to the upper register, how one sings, a small phrase that they go down into they go down into the lower register. So melody is really important because it helps sort of broadcast the emotion. So you really need those two components, and they exist simultaneously. And I think a prime example of this, I've played about 120 hours of Warframe most
I've
recently.
noticed.
I love it. It
Yeah.
is
My
one of
cousin
my
plays a lot of that game.
it's one of my top 5 games of all time. It's
Wow.
incredible. It's incredibly philosophical. It's deep. It's like very, there's like hints of Buddhism and hints of, I mean, it's incredibly emotional, and it's a really, really, really deep story, which I really love. And so This Is What You Are is one of my favorite tracks of all time. And the reason why I love it is because it starts off with a soprano singing, and it's very simple, and the melody is what's driving that. And then eventually we thrust into this motion with taiko drums, boom, bam, bam, boom, bam, boom, bam. And then all of a sudden you feel this like thing where it's like, oh my God, like I exist in the world. I don't know, it's weird. Some pieces really like make you feel like you are seen and make you feel like you can rise up to any challenge, and they do that through melody and through rhythm. And I think those are I mean, this is, again, it's extremely obvious, but those are the basics of what makes music so valuable, is rhythm and melody. And you get pitch and tone and volume and all these other
Sure.
things, but at its very core, music can be broken down into rhythm and into melody and notes on the page, and that's all that. So yeah, that's what I think anyway.
Well, and it's, you say it's like obvious, but I do feel like with music, it can be such a case of like greater than the sum of its parts, right? Like you said, you can write those notes and someone can perform those. But for me, sometimes it's like when that note hits, when that part of the final boss fight happens or whatever, it's like those two things on their own don't do as much for me emotionally as those two things happening in harmony with each other, right?
Well, 1,000,000%. And that's why, it's funny, because when I started the channel, actually, it was funny because some comments I used to get would be like, well, I would never listen to an opera singer for, an opera singer's opinion. I only listen to composers or
Well, it's
whatever.
on the internet, so it must be true, right? That's
Right. First of all,
100% fact.
first of all, second of all, I do think that in general, the people that we see on YouTube, and there's no discrediting them because they're all incredibly talented. I have a couple folks in my sphere that also do the same thing, and we all do it in our own individual way. But um, no one has, yes, they've talked about emotion within the context of analyzing pieces and breaking them down incredibly well. 8-bit music theory is a phenomenal example.
Yeah.
A bunch of other folks, and the thing is that, like, no one ever has sat down and really just analyzed the piece of music based on, when I hear these notes and when we hear these experiences musically, this is what we might feel, and this is how we are trying to feel it. Because nobody, in general, no one, unless you're a composer or an arranger or really mathematical, no one really thinks about music in a left to right sort of way. We think about it
Sure.
like in a Z axis, how it makes us feel, how we connect to it, how it resonates with us, like you said. And so
Yeah.
I think, like, it's been a really interesting journey on my end to talk about emotion and the vulnerability of expression through music. It's yeah, you make a
It's
great point.
well, and it's a fascinating thing because, like, I don't know. I'm sure I know there's science behind it, but I don't know what it is that I feel like I read it somewhere where like music, when you're like remembering something, right? You're not like viewing a snapshot of that thing. Your brain is recreating that memory essentially.
Ah, yeah, 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 yeah,
And
yeah.
so, to put it in video games, terms, it's like when I hear a certain song of a game that made me feel sad or whatever, like that song, like example, we're gonna talk about Final Fantasy VII again for a second, but like I cannot listen to Aerith's theme without getting misty eyed because that is literally the first time I ever cried at a video game. Was
Mm,
we all know what part I'm talking about.
yeah,
But
yeah.
that's the first time I ever broke down playing a game and got that emotionally impacted. And it's like, so when I hear that song, it's like I'm remembering when that happened to me the first time, and it's like my brain is recreating that memory, and it's like the emotion comes with it. It just it opens the gate, and the emotion just comes through too. And it's like I have a hard time listening to that song without getting choked up, and it's crazy how music can trigger that just as easily as remembering like an event. The music can
Yeah,
make me
yeah.
think of the event, and then that makes me remember the emotion, and I just love that stuff, man. It's
I
so
mean, I
cool.
mean, it's true, and it's a really funny thing actually because sometimes I have a I guess in all the music I've listened to, I have maybe because I went to school for music, and so like I sort of like had to separate myself from the musical experience because I had to do all the technical aspects of it.
Hmm.
But like, for instance, "This Is What You Are" from Warframe is one of my favorite songs of all time,
I
and
wrote that
when I
down. I'm gonna check it out after
oh,
for
it's
sure.
so beautiful. Oh my God, it's so beautiful. But when I think about the song, where I am actually is at the gym, which is where the first time I heard it. And my father was is ill at the time, and I was doing burpees, and I remember the music. In a weird way, the music was motivating me to maybe instill some of my health to his ailing health. And so it's weird. I mean, I just got to that part in the game, and that part in the game was absolutely beautiful, and it was mesmerizing, and it like it did a Shadowbringers flip, and you know what I'm talking
Oh
about.
yeah.
It was worth it. Like 40 hours of just doing this star chart, and all of a sudden you get to this one planet, and this like shift happens, and it flips the game on its head, and it's like, holy shit, okay. But so that's incredible on its own, right? So like this
Yeah.
is what you are in context is like, wow. But what I refer to is this emotion of like trying to in some metaphysical way heal my father. So it's weird how for me, or Nausicaa on the Valley of the Wind, prime example. I don't know if you've seen these movies, the Studio Ghibli movies, but um,
Uh, not recently. No.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so the first time I listened to a lot of this music was beforehand because I really was like in a phase of like watching Studio Ghibli movies and watching all of them.
Sure.
And so Nausicaa in the Valley of the Wind or Kiki's Delivery Service, I listened to the tunes beforehand. So I remember the moment that I connected the music to what I had heard into the movie, and I was like, "Oh, so I remember sitting on the couch watching the movie, but I also have this connection of listening to the music beforehand. Anyway, long story short, I totally understand.
Yeah.
That's I'm agreeing with you. That's 5 minutes away of saying I agree with you. Sorry.
It's all good. Like I
Very
said,
passionate about it.
we've done 3 episodes about music. I could talk for a while about it, so don't even
Yeah.
feel bad. Um, so so I've seen you do a lot of videos which is fascinating to me, where you're listening to a piece of music from a game, whether it's like a character's theme or a location theme or whatever,
Yeah.
and you're like pretty bang on a lot of the times at describing what that character is or what that area is. Can you elaborate a little bit more on how you're able to sort of decipher that type of information from just listening to the music?
Just magic, man. No, no, I think what it comes down to is like knowing tropes.
Hmm.
It's like because I've been thinking about this because for me it's like it comes really easy, but I don't fully understand why I know how to do that. I think it
Sure.
comes down to tropes. I think it comes down to the fact that composers leave us like clues because so the composer's goal is to ultimately make us feel something. No composer's like I don't want them unless they are purposefully writing something that makes you feel ambivalent, which is really hard to do when you're writing music because music is the language of is the language of emotion. And not to get all like woo woo on you, but I personally believe that. And And so composers, you know, if they're trying, if the theme is like a League of Legends theme, and the character has gone through a lot of suffering, and they're pained, and their world has fallen apart, you're going to, but then they decide to get up and rise up and say, you know what, I'm going to do this. There's going to be a shift where the first half of the piece is going to be slow. It's going to have piano and cello and some of these like very obvious musical choices. It's like high violins signifying childhood and youth and elegance, and then when there's a shift that happens, that's when we can automatically tell, oh, this is now they're rising up, and now they're going to stand up and not give up and not surrender. So
Right.
some of it's just sort of guessing. And the thing is, like, there's a piece, Jin's theme from League of Legends, and he's apparently like a murderer and a sociopath, a psychopath, and the theme is actually about him killing his victims, and or from the victim's perspective. I can't remember exactly,
Okay.
but the music is gorgeous. And so I created this whole story about how Jin is suffering, and he like regrets that, and it actually was the opposite. And
Okay.
and so it subverted expectations, which is actually phenomenal.
Yeah.
But point is, like, you know, it's kind of like reading a book where you're
Sure.
not going to get the subtext of what the character is unless you know, like, music is so interesting, especially in video games, because it's so attached to the context that sometimes it's beautiful on its own, but you really need that full picture in order to fully grasp it. So I don't know. That's basically a long way of me saying I have no idea. Um,
No, but it's some of the stuff you're saying to me right now makes total sense. But I wouldn't like this is why I like your videos, is like I wouldn't have realized that's why it sounds that way to me until you sort of put it in like layman terms for me, essentially. Like
yeah.
I don't see the code when I'm listening to music, and you can obviously just recognize things and put little information together just based off hearing it.
I
And
mean, I guess so.
yeah,
I guess
well,
so.
at least from what the videos that I've watched, and again, that's why it's exciting to watch for me, because like I don't know why I kind of understand this character based off his music, but when I watch videos like this, I'm like, oh, well, that's why I understood this character better. Like I just don't know the reason why, but when you say it, it's like,
Sure.
oh, duh, of
Oh
course.
yeah, of
But
course.
I wouldn't come to that conclusion on my own, right? Because I
But
just
it's
don't speak the
interesting though,
language.
because composers can go ahead and do things that are completely different and totally flip a script. I mean,
For
again, not to
sure.
talk about Warframe is the most recent thing I've played, and
Yeah,
I've
for
played it
sure.
so much that it's like in me. But
Yeah.
the last expansion, or the last like sort of story beat that they did, Whispers in the Walls, there's a lot of Mongolian throat singing.
Okay.
And this throat singing, it's interesting because it's really hard to pinpoint why. Like, why would you include throat singing in this, and these like sort of Egyptian qualities to this, even though we're talking about like a science fiction world with in science fiction characters?
Right.
But what I came to conclude while I was playing was, oh, this sounds like this, and it's really hard to pin down because that's the point of the character it's representing. It's representing a character that can't be pinned down. It's representing a character that is mysterious and like otherworldly and doesn't have a shape. And the thing about Mongolian throat singing is that there is no like tonal centers.
Right.
And so actually I just discovered more of it just by saying that. So anyway, I guess
Sure.
it's probably just 10 years of just doing it like in a hyper focused way and trying to understand, characters that I portrayed in operas, and like, why does my character sing this? Why does he say to Violetta, "Don't leave me," or "I love you," or why does he go to the party and throw money at her and treat her
Sure.
like a piece of shit? You know what I mean? And so like the music is the clue, and the role of the performer and the opera singer is to share that clue with the audience so that they can understand the story from start to finish. So I guess it's just my training, I guess.
Sure. Yeah, well, like I said, those of
Such a
us that
weird answer, but
no, not at all, man. Like I
I guess
said,
that's
it's
just
like
what it is.
when you're saying that, I'm like, oh, well, that makes sense, but I would never have concluded that
Yeah.
myself because I don't speak the language, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
One of my favorite, and I've honestly watched this video like multiple times because your reaction to it, not just understanding the character, but your reaction to like not expecting this song to be as good as it was the Caius theme from Final Fantasy 13. Um,
Oh,
and
yeah.
I love your reaction in that
Oh,
video
Caius.
when
Yeah,
it
yeah, yeah.
really kicks in. And I feel like you genuinely like understood his character, like just by even just interpreting the Latin lyrics, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, and I feel like that was one that you it seemed at least that you weren't expecting it to be as hard to go as hard as it was, and it was really fun watching. Because that's like one of, to me, like probably one of the most underappreciated tracks. People like shit on Final Fantasy 13 a lot, and I understand why. I like them personally, but it's like, yeah, but like listen to the music at least though. Like the music is so good, even if you don't like the gameplay or whatever. And I feel like his track is like, that's one of the best tracks in that whole trilogy. And it just gets super overlooked. So I really enjoyed how much you seem to enjoy it.
Yeah, I know. I really enjoyed it. And the funny thing is that I listen to so much music day to day. Like sometimes I don't remember pieces, but the Caius theme is so good because of, I remember because there's a really strong male choral. It's a predominant male chorus. Mm-hmm. And what's really exciting to me is anytime that there's like, classical, so that's not, I wouldn't call it opera singing because technically it's choral singing, even though there's singing with like an opera. Anyway, it's a whole like, definitions, but
sure.
it's so powerful because of the use of classical musicians and classical singers that are able to bring forth that power and that energy, which is so satisfying. Yeah, I remember that piece because I wasn't sure where it was going to go.
Yeah,
and I kind of
when it did hit you, it was clear you didn't think it was going that way.
and the funny thing is that sometimes people, I do get the occasional comment, thankfully not too many, but the occasional comment that's like, well, wow, that was excessive reaction, or that was fake or cringe or whatever. But it's very, with music, I have a very hard time keeping that shit in because it's just always been a passion, and video game music is so special. So like being able to talk about it and being able to hear it and being able to enjoy it. My fiance just walked in, so you're gonna hear our dog, one of our dogs. But yeah, so there's a real sense of just joy of being able to listen to things, both that I know and don't know.
Well, and that's like, so when I was talking earlier, about like when a song just hits the right way, right in the middle of a battle or whatever, like that is one that like hit me so hard, like how good his theme was. Yeah. Like when I was playing that game, that's why I will like never forget how that song hit me when I was like doing a boss fight against him. Cause it was like, I think it was like maybe halfway through the game, like the heroes were kind of losing at this point. Like it was just, oh man. And Caius is he's actually like a pretty tragic character. And that's why a lot of the things you were saying, it didn't seem like you were interpreting him as just like this evil, like just straight up evil person. Like he's anyway, I won't go watch Marco's video on that song because you'll see what I mean. But, I love that song so much. So seeing you react to it the way you do and understand it as well as you did, that's probably one of my favorite of your videos. I love. I'll go back and watch that multiple times. I enjoy that one very much.
Oh, that's so sweet. Thank you.
So just sort of on the topic of Final Fantasy XIII's music. I know you said before that the FF13 battle theme was among one of your favorite Final Fantasy battle tracks. So is that still the case? And if so, or if not, like what does it do differently that stands out for you? I know you've sort of talked about its more sort of jazz style approach, but if you could elaborate on that a little bit.
Yeah, I think Saber's Edge definitely has a bit of an improvisatory thing about it. You know what I really like about Hamauzu and Final Fantasy XIII's music on the whole is the fact that it's very large. It's very like it reminds me a little bit of Rachmaninoff in the sense that Rachmaninoff, like they used to call, I think, or no, was it Liszt? One of the two. You had to have octopus fingers in order to hit all the notes, and it was like purposely difficult because of how wide. This is Rachmaninoff. There's even jokes about it. How expansive the way that he would play the piano and the way that he would write for the piano. And Hamauzu's music in Final Fantasy XIII has this sort of grandiosity and this sort of width about it that is really, really satisfying. And what I really like about Blinded by Light, more so than Saber's Edge, although I do like when the theme actually comes into Saber's Edge. The first like minute and a half, 2 minutes, I'm sort of like, okay, where are we going with this? But then we kick in, it's awesome. But Blinded by Light, I love the melody, and that's the point. That's what I was trying to say earlier. Like, there's just something about that melody and the way that it rises up that it's so like, yeah, baby, and it just like
that's a good way of putting it.
Yeah, and I think it also like highlights a little bit of Lightning's like I- So what I like, so I didn't finish Final Fantasy 13. I put it down because literally the paradigm system, I was like
Yeah, I
getting
saw
like,
your
I
video.
felt whiplashed about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
It's
was
not
like,
for
what the?
everyone, for sure.
Yeah.
I will never shame someone for not finishing it, even though I like it. But yeah, totally
Yeah.
get it.
I mean, I don't disrespect it because I
Yeah,
love Final Fantasy. So, and in some ways I liked it more than Final Fantasy 16, really,
sure.
realistically. But I think that like the horns also, I think, like give a real boost to Lightning because she's not over sexualized.
Yeah,
She's not weak. She's
no.
in this like first several acts, or the first act, she's very stubborn, very like, well, whatever, get over it.
Yep.
And so that trumpet, I think, really highlights her. Whereas if we look at like the themes from the others, they're all pretty good, but something about Blinded by Light just like really hits on like the emotional arc of a character rather than being like ba 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 ba
Yeah.
ba, you know.
And I feel like you put it pretty aptly in one of your videos where it's just like, this is not a song that's like, okay, we're fighting now, let's fight. Like it's a lot more, like you said, it kind of builds to that melody of, a minute in or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I've listened to all the final. I mean, Theater Rhythm Final Bar Line is like one of my favorite games. I don't know
I'm
if you
so
ever seen
glad you talk about that game because I played the shit out of that game last year and I love
it.
it. And I'm
Yeah.
definitely going to talk about something in it later that it taught me
Okay.
something. I'm so
But
happy you talk about that game.
it's such an awesome game, and
Yeah.
it's easily one of my favorite games of last year. And
Yeah.
so being able to explore the other Final Fantasies, because I've only played I'm still slowly working my way through 5, and I'm still obviously going to work on 6, and then I played 7 up besides 11.
Yep.
And um the other battle themes are sort of the same. And 5 is where it starts to kind of deviate, and then
Yep.
6 is where it really steps into like that masterpiece theater kind of thing. But like, so it's again just a long tangent of just saying that yes, Blinded by Light is still just like my jam. I love Blinded by Light. I always will. It's so good.
I
It's
have
so
like
singable too.
yeah, that was one that would be in my head for weeks
Mhm.
after when I was first playing that game.
That's melody, baby.
Yeah.
That's melody. Melody will
um,
get you every time.
and I have like 3 lightning posters in my
Oh,
computer room
really?
here. I love Lightning. She's like one of my favorite characters. And I think
She's incredible.
that tracks I didn't think of it like suiting her as a character as much as just being like the 13 melody. But yeah, when you put it that way, it totally is very indicative of like her sort of character and her sort of like energy. So yeah.
But the beauty is maybe. The beauty is I
Sure,
don't know,
true.
because I'm not Hamauzu. And the beautiful thing is that in the one of the things that I love about music in general, not even just video game music, but composition in general, is that when composers create, any composer that's like, well, it's this way,
True.
that is not how it works.
Right.
And I will
That's a good point.
fight anybody verbally about this
Yeah.
because it's simply not true.
Yeah.
Like when a composer composes, it goes away. Now
Yeah.
there may be certain things in the piece that they say, well, oh, you should do this, or there's like, they'll write a note, they'll annotate what they want the dynamics to sound like. But the purpose of music is to interpret and enjoy and not change radically, but at least to be able to like create your own sense of like where the musical journey is. And so I get really agitated when folks are like, well, no, the composer wrote this for this, therefore this is what it means. And the fact of the matter is that no, yes, it's for a context. So let me get down to this context conversation, which is the only thing I'm going to say about context, because yeah, I'm very passionate about this. So a composer will say what they want it to be, but it's up to us as listeners and interpreters and people that do covers and whatever to then say, okay, I really love this. This is how it makes me feel. This is how I connect to it. Yes, the moment is from Shala's theme is about Shala in Chrono Trigger.
Right.
Sure. But that song can also make you feel 8 different emotions and feelings, and all of those are valid. And just because, Mitsuda composed it for that character's internal world doesn't mean that we can't relate it to our own internal world.
Well, and I think that's what makes a track like that. Because, like, I think that song, I was literally talking about that song with a friend the other day. I think it plays once in the entire.
It does. It's only once.
Right. But that's, I think, what gives its longevity is that you can, like you said, you can attach that to anything, not just that character. And when a song only plays one time in the entire game, and like, it's not that everyone loves Shala and that's why everyone like loves that theme, when it plays once in this 30-hour RPG. It's just because that song evokes something in so many people, and they, like you said, they attach whatever experience or emotion to it, which I think is what makes a song like that plays once last, like, what was Chrono Trigger, 96? So like almost 30 years later, and everyone, it's like, I know if anyone that has played Chrono Trigger before, if you show them that song, they're like, oh yeah, I remember, like, I know that song, like, you know what I mean? So yeah, that's a good way of putting it, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, the whole I mean, that said, I mean, I think that I mean, I do feel like, it's written really well for Shala as a character, and like that experience that she's going through with like having her watch her mother sort of like basically losing her mother, and
Mm-hmm.
having to sort of find herself and decide to go against her mother, and be her own individual person. And then, all that stuff is like really important to her character. So like understanding that certainly highlights it. I played through over Thanksgiving here in the States. I played through Phantom Liberty, and I don't know. Have you played through Cyberpunk Phantom Liberty?
No, I haven't.
It's really powerful and incredibly bleak, and not really fun. It's not a game that you play for fun. It's a game you play to like feel something. And I Never Looking Back is the track. It's incredible, and it was one of my most played tracks of the year. It's so haunting and terrifying, and it's beautiful, and it's, but not in like a beautiful way. It's beautiful in like a painful way.
Sure.
And when I got to it in game and I heard the context, I'd already like sort of had like a deep seated feeling about it when I listened to it. But when I played it in the game, it was just like a punch in the gut, which was really like crazy, because I haven't had that in a game in a long time, where I was like, oh my God, like my choice actually, like I wasn't really, I wanted to be into Baldur's Gate 3, but I wasn't as into it as I hoped I would be. And obviously there's plenty of decisions in that game that are also punches to the gut. But for whatever reason in Phantom Liberty, I just felt so like, whoa. And that's cool because it works in context and also works out of context, based on like how it's written and stuff. It's magic, really. It's as poetic as that is. It's true.
Well, and that's why my brother and I could talk for hours about video game music, because it's more than just, oh, it's the track that plays at this level or whatever, right? Like it we attach so much more to it, which is why I love when you do those, when you show like non-gamers or whatever, like some, I like hearing what they are getting from it, and it just sort of validates that, you don't have to listen to this music just because you like video games. Like it, I enjoy that part of that whole that connection, for sure. So back to some music analysis stuff. There's two examples that I definitely wanted to bring up, because I was like, oh, if anyone will appreciate this, Marco will. So again, we're going back to FF7 for a minute. But so when we're talking about like how music can be part of the storytelling and the narrative and stuff like that, there's a couple of things that I have either, I've discussed with my brother and with other people that just like talking about video game music, where some examples are like Genova's theme, right, from the original FF7. I think I saw this on someone's music analysis video, actually, but they were talking about how like that, I guess that song key changes like a lot. It goes through like many key changes, like very kind of rapidly. And it's like that sort of has to do with, Genova is a shape-shifting alien. And so it's like that he was like tying that into that sort of narrative. It's like, it's like her music doesn't even stay the same for very long in terms of what key it's being played in. And I found that, really interesting. And then, so this is where I wanted to bring up theater rhythm. So I was playing, first, when we're talking about Final Fantasy VII Remake, I'll give you the short version, but I subscribe to the sort of theory that like Sephiroth in Remake is like a all-knowing Sephiroth, and he knows that he failed in the original game's timeline, and he knows he failed at the end of Advent Children, and he's trying to remake the timeline. I subscribe to that theory. And so when I was playing the Genova theme from Final Fantasy VII Remake in theater rhythm, there's a point in that song that I never heard this melody or this very quiet sort of thing, but it plays like the One Winged Angel, like the lyrical melody, like when they're singing
Da,
the
da, ba, da, da.
yeah. There's a
Mhm.
part in the Genova theme where it makes you press the button, so it's like you have to hit the buttons like da 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 da, and I was like, wait, what? Like, how did I not hear this when I was listening to the music? And it's like, to me, what I sort of interpret that as, it's like, Sephiroth in Final Fantasy Remake is showing up where he's not supposed to show up. He shows up
Yeah.
at the beginning of the game when you're not supposed to, you're not supposed to see him yet in the OG game or whatever. And it's like, even in the music, he's like slipping into
Everywhere.
the Genova's theme. And it's like, I don't know, stuff like that I could watch videos about for hours because I find that stuff. And it's theater rhythm that made me hear that and like go on this like big tangent with my friends about it.
Well, you also hear it because I'm doing a video on the bombing run because I was like, the bombing run is such a monumental, legendary piece of music, and I because I started playing the original just to kind of rehash like my experience with it, and
Yep.
I haven't played it since I beat it because I put like so many hours into it the first time,
Sure.
and I don't have that time, so I'm like, if I
Yeah,
can't
yeah.
do it Knights of the Round, how am I gonna play this? I don't want to fight Bizarro Sephiroth. Anyway, that's literally the reason why I haven't played it again. Because it was so. I remember how time consuming it was. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? To get a black chocobo. Anyway,
Oh
I
yeah.
still clearly have feelings about it.
Yeah.
But it's interesting how in the remake, you're right, because actually it's a really good point, and I hadn't thought about it that way, and I don't know if I like this or not, but but Sephiroth certainly is in control, and you hear that in every single. Basically, there's countless melodies where he appears, and even the music. I was watching the Rebirth intro, it even appears there, and it appears whenever we see the whispers, and when Aerith in the original, she's looking at the I don't even want to call it Mako because it's absolutely Mako, but watching the Mako reactor spill out
I called
of
it
the.
Mako growing up too, so you're fine.
Everybody did.
Yeah.
Anyway, watching the Mako kind of burst out of the pipe as she's like praying, I assume towards the seat of life or something, and then in the remake obviously she turns and she looks down the
Yeah.
street, and that's where the da, da,
Yep.
da. So that little motif is everywhere, and obviously you're right, like Sephiroth does appear right after the bomb explodes and all that other stuff, or the reactor explodes. So it's interesting how like even in Genova, and I think it like highlights, because do we know that she's his mother at this point in Rebirth or in remake? I don't think so.
No, he only first mentions that when he's telling them the flashback story, because he says he Cloud says that Sephiroth said that to him when they're like on the truck or something, and then they're like, wait, what? Genova's that thing we saw in the lab.
Right. Right. So yeah, that's right. And so like, yeah, and we're gonna get into all the Nibelheim stuff as we get into Rebirth. So
Yeah.
that's actually that I feel like that's the best part of Final Fantasy. Anyway, yeah, it's interesting how like it spills forth everywhere. And so if you were a player that didn't know Final Fantasy VII at all, experiencing that, you might be like, oh, every time I hear Sephiroth come in, his motif plays, and they essentially turned One Winged Angel into a leitmotif, which is like a thing that repeats every time a character shows up.
Sure.
It's really interesting because
Yeah.
that motif represents Sephiroth, but in the originals, we did get that when he's like burning down. Is it Niflheim?
Nibelheim. I mean,
Nibelheim.
I say Nibelheim. I don't know. They'll probably say it a different way. Who knows? But that's how I say it.
Well, it's like Niflheim is like actually like in an opera, I think.
Oh,
so
yeah. No, it's definitely a B.
Nibelheim.
Yeah.
Yeah. But so like we do hear that, that theme appear when he's like burning the town down and so on and so forth. But I really do feel like the team of composers have taken it and turned it into like that motif of him to represent that sort of like ever omnipresent, like, he's always around.
Yeah.
Right.
And he knows everything. Supposedly.
Yeah, I know. But I'm really curious to see how this goes. I mean, we don't have to get into a whole conversation about Final Fantasy VII, but it's too much. Anyway, whatever. Moving on.
Don't worry. My brother and I will cover that conversation. Don't worry about it. We don't have to talk about it.
I love Advent Children. Don't get me wrong. I watched all of it. I haven't played Ever Crisis, or not Ever Crisis, Crisis Core.
Sure.
Ever Crisis is the mobile game. I absolutely haven't played that. But like, I don't need to know like young Sephiroth. Like some people want to. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I would never yuck anybody's yum. But for me, I'm like, okay,
Yeah. I get to a point. I did this around when Remake was coming out, where I go on media blackout. I'm like, yeah, I don't need to see anymore. I'm buying the game. I'm gonna play the game.
Yeah,
But
I mean, me
I don't
too,
need to
right?
see
Like,
more, and I don't need to read everyone's rage
I,
tweets about it. And, I will be offline for a week and a half when that game
yeah,
comes out.
yeah, that's
Um,
completely fair.
and so just one more thing about Sephiroth and his music, because I just feel like this was like a game that really made me appreciate music as almost a character, right?
Mhm.
At least in recent years, where and I think you did a video about the One Winged Angel Rebirth. I think is technically what it's called, but it's like the final
Yeah,
boss, of Remake or whatever
I have to
theme.
redo that video.
And okay, well, I mean, I still liked it, but
That was my second video I ever made. It was just me, like,
oh,
sitting
really?
still watching it. Yeah, it was the
Oh,
second
okay.
video I ever made.
But what I love about that is like how the song itself, it's like it plays with your expectations if you know the song, the original
Right,
song,
right,
right?
right,
And
right,
it kind
right,
of
yeah.
it builds up and then it veers in some other direction. And you're like, oh, that wasn't the part I was getting ready to sing along with or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And to me, it's like, well, that's also what like Sephiroth is doing with you. Like he's messing with Cloud in the original, where he's trying to veer him off the path, and just that kind of stuff. It's like when music is a character in the game. Like I freaking love that stuff, man. And it's like I don't even know why I love it so much, but it's just like stuff like that just like makes me want to talk about it. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I know. Well, the debating there, that song, it's definitely,
Yeah.
musical blue balls in a lot of ways,
Yeah.
which is amazing actually, because it does again, like, veer off of your expectations, and it's super satisfying in that way. Like, it's also cool because One Winged Angel is so, like, in the lexicon of, like,
Mm-hmm.
what a video game's piece of music is, and we
Yep.
have, like, what, like, 20 different versions of it?
I know.
The Distant Worlds version,
Yep.
the Advent Children version, the Black Mages version, the
Yep.
the Final Fantasy remake version. So it's interesting to see how, like, in that particular context, when we're fighting Sephiroth and fighting the Whispers, and when we finally, like, we didn't fight Sephiroth until the end in the original. So the fact that we're having a boss battle with Sephiroth at the end of the first game, it's like, what the frick?
Yeah.
So it makes sense that they would include it. And it makes me wonder how, and then to tie it all together, are they going to bust out the actual theme? Because
Yeah.
I actually don't think that the rebirth version of that song is the, like, ultimate arrival point.
No.
I think it'll probably, honestly, if I was them, and I don't know what they'll do, but I think that they'll probably default to the original and just keep it clean and keep it, like, exactly
For
as we
like
know
the
it.
part 3 finale or whatever. Yeah.
Because the power in that is going to be the nostalgia, and B, the fact that it's as clean as it needs to be, and it's as good as it isn't. I personally feel like you don't need to mess with One Winged Angel too
Yeah.
much, especially for when it comes to actually fighting him. You know what I
Right.
mean?
It's like messing with it now is almost just done for like a narrative reason or
Well, exactly,
yeah.
exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I like
exactly.
that. Yeah. Anyway,
It's
those are just a
interesting.
couple FF7 specific things and especially because you mentioned theater rhythm, I was like, oh, he'll appreciate that theater
No,
rhythm
for
taught
sure.
me this this one thing.
No, no, no. 1,000,000%.
Right
I
on.
love theater rhythm.
What if how would I put this? What what was a game that you went into, and it's okay if the answer is Warframe, but what was a music that you went into that was the most like unexpectedly impressive OST that you just didn't even know the music was renowned or weren't expecting to like the music, just kind of playing it for the game and just kind of, you know, blindsided you?
Oh, this is easy. Ace Combat. Ace
I
Combat
I
has
had a feeling I've seen your Ace Combat videos, and I was like, if it's not Warframe, it's probably Ace Combat.
it's a tie between Ace Combat and Monster Hunter. Now, of course, I had played 115 hours of Monster Hunter, but at the time I wasn't really paying attention to video game music in the same way that I am now.
Sure.
Oh, and it was also Near Automata was a big one. Near and yes, I would say those three actually, because I played them right around. Well, so no, so Ace Combat, I didn't when I rented it for 2 days and I didn't really pay attention to the music. I kind of just was like, okay, cool, whatever. It's a fighting game. I kind of hate this. I returned it. Fast forward though, and I had a patron drop like 0 from Ace Combat 0, and I was like, oh god, this is gonna be like mechanical bullshit. Oh god, it's gonna suck. And I looked at it, and it was like six. And I was like 6 minutes. Oh my god. And at the time, everything was so new, so I was also like, okay, well, whatever. Like, let's check it out. And yeah, I think nearly every single Ace Combat track just left me completely speechless, like almost to the point that like I didn't have it, like Unsung War especially. I was just like, holy shit. But then even now, dude, like 2 years later, I'm listening. Like this last year I discovered Fighter's Honor and Sound Embrace, and like, oh god. And then you listen to like the Liberation of Grace Maria, and I just and then there's also Project Wingman, which is like the like love child of Ace Combat, and it's like made by 3 people, and they
Oh
it's
wow.
like it's unreal. It's a fighting game that's great music, but like Ace Combat, just like last year I was really worried. So before I finished up Phantom Liberty and Warframe, I was convinced that I could not finish video games because I kept picking up and putting down games,
Okay.
except for fighter plane games.
Okay.
And I was like, all right, 20 hours of just shooting shit. Yeah, I can do that. I don't know. It was really bizarre. And then I was like, okay, no, I just need to find things that I'm really interested in.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
fine.
You just it's that
Like,
needs something to grab you the right way.
yeah, but it's hard. And then Monster Hunter 2 is amazing because each of the monsters have especially when you get into the Elder Dragons or like the high rank monsters that have their own themes, they each have their own characteristics. And it's amazing. Yeah,
I
Monster
should
Hunter. And then
I definitely need to listen to Monster Hunter music like like outside of the frantic hunt, like the gameplay, because when I'm playing that game I'm like barely listening to the music because I'm you know panic, I'm a mess and I'm trying to not die or whatever.
yeah.
Now that I know, like I feel like I need to pay it more attention when I play Monster Hunter again, because I have heard
Oh,
that before, and I was like, I don't remember it being bad, I just don't remember it, but it's because I'm too focused on the gameplay and
well,
not dying.
it's so funny you say that though, because I pretty much went into every Bloodborne track, even though it's one of my favorite games I've ever played. I went into Bloodborne, like all the tracks. I basically didn't remember any of them because I was so
Sure.
and most of, and I've played through Dark Souls 3 like 5 times, and I played through Bloodborne like 5 times, and I could not remember nearly any tracks
Sure.
because it's
You're
just
just
too
not
busy.
even paying attention to it. Yeah,
No, even me, it's like, okay, whatever. Anyway,
yeah. Sure.
like, and then
um
it's like 8 hours later.
One of the biggest ones that hit me was I've had friends, because my friends all knew that I love JRPGs and I'm a big Final Fantasy nerd and all this stuff. And back in like the early, I don't know when this would have been, what in the 2010s at some point. I had a lot of friends tell me like, man, if you ever see Xenoblade Chronicles, you should try it. I'm like, what the hell is
Ooh.
that? I didn't had no, wasn't even on my radar, right? And I saw it at like, GameStop one day used for like $20. I'm like, I think this is the game that my friends were telling me about. So I'm like, okay, I'll $20, whatever, I'll grab it. And I went home and someone says, just let the title screen play for a few minutes. And I was like, okay, like I'm not opposed to that. Put it in, and I'm just like listening to that like main, title
The
screen
piano,
theme.
yeah.
And it's just like, oh, it's gonna be that kind of game. It's like, okay, I'm on board 100%. And like that game, like hit me so hard with the music that I just had no idea this game even existed. And there's so many music parts in that game that just floored me.
That's
So
my that's my white whale. I really want to play it this year, but I'm scared because
it is
it
long.
requires like. But I just put 120 hours into Warframe. Surely I
True.
can put another 100 into Xenoblade. So
Yeah.
200 some odd hours.
I can guarantee you will at least love, like, you will not be let down by the music at the very least. The way they
The story's good
construct
too.
their, yeah, like I love the story and the way they construct their cutscenes with music. Like it
Mm,
seems to be like perfectly in sync a lot of the time. Oh my god. Anyway, that game just like opened a
it's
whole new
that
world
good,
for
huh?
me. Yeah,
Okay,
and
that's
for one that just came out of nowhere on my radar at least. So yeah,
yeah, for sure. When it slaps you in the face like that, it's such a good feeling because you're
yeah,
like, oh wow, like this is like I had no idea. Okay,
yeah.
all right, I've just unlocked a new memory. Yeah, core memories unlocked
Yeah,
with the music. Yeah, I
exactly.
know.
This if this is too similar, we can move on to another question. But if it's the same game, that's fine. What's a video game soundtrack that you think needs more attention, that you just think gets overlooked all the time?
Oh, it's funny. I just asked this question on my on Twitter and
Oh
on
yeah,
X
true.
about like,
Yeah,
yeah,
that's true.
because I'm always looking for like what's an underrated soundtrack, and oftentimes the answers are really like Katana Zero, um, Hyperlight Drifter, uh, uh, Everhood. Wow, what a great game Everhood is! It's like 8 hours. It's like one of the best games I've had the joy of playing last year. It was so much fun.
Oh
It's like
wow.
a rhythm. It's a rhythm game, but
Oh,
you're dodging enemy
y-
attacks.
did you
So
talk about that on like your like kind of
my
year
year,
in review music?
yes,
Okay,
yes, yes.
yeah, I noticed that. I was like when you said rhythm game, I remember seeing that, and
It
it looked
is
interesting.
so good.
Okay.
So good. So Everhood is on there, and then I think too, like just it's funny. No one has talked about Lies of P, and I stopped halfway because I just apparently I have anger issues, but I couldn't fit. Once I spent like 8 hours on a boss, I was like, nope, nope, it's not the
Yeah,
type of gamer I am. Now I play games on easy, and I just like have accepted my fate as a,
sure.
I'm just too old. I don't have time. I'm playing through Yakuza Kiwami right now. I'm playing that shit on easy. Like I
Yeah,
don't.
yeah.
Prince of Persia's on easy. I play Control with like auto aim, like
I'm
auto
a
aim
I'm a
assist.
very big advocate of play how you want to play. Just enjoy the
Man,
game. Yeah.
just
So
like,
no
who's
shame
got the
here.
time, man? Who's got the time?
Yeah.
Like, I can't even parry on easy. And I'm like, man, are my reflexes that bad? I didn't think so. I feel like I'm a pretty good driver. But anyway, but yeah, so Liza P has the records in Liza P are absolutely just so sublimely beautiful. And there's one more that I was thinking about. I can't remember. There's lots. There's just too many games, and that's the thing. There's just so many games with great soundtracks, and you want to cover them all, but you're always dancing with like, do people actually care about this game? Like I thought that like Avatar: Mists of Pandaria. I'm not saying it had incredible music, but there were a few moments especially in the opening when you step out of the facility and enter into Pandora, and you see the beautiful bright colors. I was like, this is a triumph. This music is amazing. It's but no one's talking about that. You know what I
Sure.
mean? So that is what it is.
Yeah. Um and it's like, that can be frustrating for sure when I'll try to get someone to like, but if like you said, there's too many games and they're just, sometimes people are just got too many games on their backlog, and but that's what makes it fun when you find someone that likes the music of that obscure game that you play that no one else, like Bravely Default for me is one that I feel like gets
Oh
overlooked a
yeah,
lot,
yeah, it
for
is.
its music. And someone I had worked with was talking about that game one day, and I was like, whoa, stop. Like, so let's sit down and talk about this for a minute, because I need to talk about the music in this game because there's so many good tracks. But it's a 3DS game, and so most people probably weren't playing it with headphones anyway, so the music doesn't sound great. But if you actually pull up the like the soundtrack digitally, like you can hear a lot more of its quality.
Yeah,
Anyway,
yeah.
that's definitely one that I feel like gets overlooked a lot. um okay, if this is too hard, we can sort of narrow down the context of this question. But so if you could take a game let's say has like a very consistent sort of sounding motif or theme in its soundtrack, and
hmm
recontextualize it, or like genre swap its music, what game would you like to do that, and what genre would you like to swap? So an example of this would be like, I got obsessed with Persona 5 last year, and that game is super jazzy kind of music and stuff. And like, so it's like, to take that, like, the jazz music is such a part of that game's identity. It'd be interesting to hear someone take like do a different style music for a game like that. That's sort of what I mean by this question. And if that's
It's
too,
actually no, it's an easy
oh,
one.
okay, perfect.
So it's a case of dueling MMOs, because I would
Okay,
love to hear the music of World of Warcraft in Final Fantasy 14.
okay,
And they have two very different soundscapes, and
yes,
obviously World of Warcraft's ambient music is all about painting a picture, whereas and like painting a location, whereas Final Fantasy 14's music is basically always about us. Even in zones, the melody focus is, I mean, not all the zones, but like I yeah, I would love to hear more fully orchestrated tracks in that, and I would
Sure.
love to hear more like calm tracks, like not like, yes, there are plenty of calm tracks in Final Fantasy 14, but like just like some of the ambient, like peaceful, naturey. I don't, it's interesting because in WoW I feel like you are meant to sort of spend some time in a location, and even though you're doing questing and eventually going to level out of them, like the location is the king. Whereas in Final Fantasy 14, the music, even like I think about, Lahi, and
Yeah.
that whole area, I forget what it's actually called. What's that place? What's it called?
Raktika Greatwood, I think.
Oh yeah, Rocktika Greatwood. Yeah. So like I would love to hear like have a reason to be there besides trying to get Aether Currents, which you can't get there anyway.
Sure.
But like, you know what I mean? Like there's something about that music that like the main big points are so awesome. Like To the Edge, the fact that To the Edge exists at all in a
Ugh.
video game is so cool, and like how it's all like tied in to soak in, and also just like it's
Yeah.
so deeply personal. So I was watching someone on Twitch today. It's their first time stepping into Amarat. And I was like, yeah, this music is so good. Like, it's such a beautiful sequence. But I would also like love to see it like really beautiful strings and like, like not the way it sounds, even though it's
Sure.
perfect as it is. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it'd be an interesting experiment. Like, it's not saying one of those is bad. It would just
No,
be an
not both are
interesting.
good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it'd be
Yeah.
interesting to
Yeah.
see that.
1,000,000
Um,
percent.
and yeah, talking about some of those iconic tracks in 14. I saw your interview with Amanda. Is it Aiken? Is that, am I saying her
Aiken,
name?
yeah.
And with her like performance in Flow. And
Mm-hmm.
didn't she do My Star in 16? Was that not
She did
her
My
as well?
Star, yeah. She did Tomorrow and Tomorrow
Oh
and
God, her
all of
voice is
those.
incredible.
Yeah, no, she's very good at like this mixture of jazz and class. It's actually incredible how she's able to like mix and match like that. I gotta have her on again actually to maybe look at Tomorrow and Tomorrow.
Oh yeah, I
She's
mean,
so
I'll
good.
watch
So
that. No,
good. She's so good.
yeah,
She's so
but
good.
it's like a good point where like 14 has those big like you know I would almost I want to use the word set piece songs. I don't know if that's the right word, but
That for sure,
um
yeah.
and to flip that into something because I shout outs to what's that place called, Valheim? Is that what it's called in WoW? It's in like the Legion expansion. I think it's called Valheim. It's
Uh
got like the sort of like Norse sort of soundscape to it,
oh,
like the
oh
Viking.
yes, Valheim.
Yeah,
Yes.
I would
I
put
really
that
like that
music
music.
on repeat, like even when I was in another zone or something when I was playing through that expansion at the time. I loved that
Legion
track.
was good. Yeah.
Yeah,
Legion's very good. Even the High Mountain, I loved High Mountain with
yep,
the Taurens.
yeah.
That's where I first started, and I was like, wow, this is like something special. But yeah, no, it's true. The set pieces are really interesting in 14, and like one of my favorite tracks, which I actually that was the last 14 video I did was on Innocence, and I love that like you
Oh my
take
god,
the boss theme Insatiable, which I hate the first boss of Shadowbringers with a passion. I think everybody does.
the first
Forget
like
his
dungeon
name.
boss.
Yeah, the big sin eater with the huge legs
Oh yeah, oh yes,
and the tiny face. What the hell's his name?
yeah.
From
I know what you're talking about.
ugh.
It's been a
And that, but
while.
that dungeon's really cool. But
Yeah,
anyway, if you take, it's amazing how we take this repeating sort of boss theme and then we flip it on its head when it comes to fighting that particular character in Innocence. It's so cool. And really, all of Shadowbringers. I think Shadowbringers. And this is why I loved Warframe so much because they do the exact same thing, kind of. I don't want
sure.
to spoil it, but like Shadowbringers really flips the concept, and I've never seen an MMO do that, where they were like, "Hey, you're used to this, try this," and it's like, huh? And it's
Right.
like the same, but it's completely different. I love that. It was like such a big risk to me, and I love
Yeah.
that. And yeah, I'm a little bit not apprehensive about Dawn Trail, but I mean, I know that Soken delivers bangers and he's the maestro for a reason, and I adore his work. But I am curious, like, are all the songs in Dawn Trail going to be just like peppy and happy and like, oh, we're on a summer vacation, or is it going to like go somewhere? So I'm really curious to see like how things develop as we move into this like sort of new corner of Final Fantasy XIV's
Yeah.
life.
Yeah, it'll be I mean, I'm like a forever 14 player, so I'm
One
down
million
for
percent,
whatever
me too.
whatever
Yeah,
they
me
want to
too.
do. I'm going to be along for the ride, but yeah, it is definitely interesting going into the Dawn Trail with like a very different vibe, you know what I mean? It's like
Yeah, because it's like that huge peak, and then it's like, oh, summer vacation?
yeah.
What do you mean?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I guess we'll go.
Yeah. So
I
yeah,
fixed my keybinds.
will be curious. And I'm that annoying friend to all my 14, fellow players where, because the Endwalker had so much FF4 stuff in it. And I'm
Yeah.
the annoying friend on patch day. They're like, oh, this boss is from this, here's the sprite art from this boss in Final Fantasy IV, so you can appreciate it. Oh, this song is that version, or it's like a version of this song, and oh, this is a new remix of this song from this game, and I'm that annoying friend. So they'll, if there's any references in Dawn Trail, my friends will be sure to hear from me about what they are.
I love that.
So what I get for being a Final Fantasy obsessive.
I mean, nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that.
Cool. I think that's about covers what I wanted to ask you, Marco. Let me just make sure I didn't forget anything, but I think we covered everything I wanted to. After what you said, some of the stuff you're working on for, what'd you call it? Music that, I forget what you called it.
Music that moves us.
That's it. I was going to say makes us. And I was like, no, it wasn't that. What can people look forward to for what you're putting out in the next little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to always evolve. I just was accepted into a really interesting course that will basically help kind of change the trajectory of the channel, or at least change the path of it. I always have strived.
All of those sound right to me.
To,
I'm not an English major.
Strove, whatever. I've always really enjoyed pushing myself past the boundaries of what I'm capable of, and
Sure.
So I'm really trying to do more actual contextual things. So instead of reacting to music, which is a really easy way to get the algorithm to pay attention to you,
Sure.
I'm really trying to play more games, and as I'm playing them, be like, oh wow, this scene is amazing, and here's why, and then showcase the gameplay that I've played with my commentary over top.
Yeah.
As a sort of a visual thing, because I've come to realize that people love what they love because they love it, and which this sounds really obvious, but people love what they love because they love it. And so understanding why we love what we love and how that music connects us to the story and the gameplay, it's kind of if you can't beat them, join them, because
Sure.
I've tried to be we don't need the visuals, but it turns out that a lot of people are really, really deeply connected to their visuals, and instead of robbing them of that and trying to be well, you can't think that because music, you don't need it. Well, I've just started to do like the bombing run. It's just me narrating over the top of the bombing run sequence and talking about what each piece of that is.
Right.
So music that moves us. Yeah, go ahead.
Did you do something like that with Arthas? I feel
yes. Well, so yeah, I read the book and then I watched all of the cutscenes for World of Warcraft, for Warcraft 3,
right.
and then I created a sort of
yeah.
I've been trying to do a little bit more really interest. I did the same thing with Cyberpunk with Phantom Liberty, something really personalized. That's a personalized video.
Yeah, I think I watched the Arthas one because which book was it that you read? Was it just called Arthas?
Yeah,
I am not a book reader, but I could not put that friggin' book down.
Yeah, it was a good read.
Yeah,
it was a good read.
Anyway, so when you were describing the type of video, I'm like, wait, did I see one of these videos already? Because I was thinking of the Arthas one because it was more like that than just a raw reaction video.
Yeah,
sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, it's okay. So music that moves us is really I realize that there are so many people. I've sort of amassed this wonderful community of like-minded folks that just love video game music, whatever game that they love.
Yeah.
And I just started to make a series. I was also really inspired by the TV show, The Movies That Made Us.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, well, what if I just ask people 3 questions? What's the piece you love? Why do you love it? What about it moves you? What would you hope other people would get out of it? And these videos are not going to be long, 5 to 6, 7 minutes. Just basically they answer a question. I read their question out loud. We have a conversation one way about it. Yeah. And then we just play examples of the song connected to that. And then we go on our merry way. And I think it's a beautiful way to highlight not only people's love for music, but also why they love specific sequences, which will make other people be I feel seen, I feel valued, 100%. I feel, and that's all the game is. It's just making people need to feel validated and appreciated for what they like. And And I think that that's a beautiful thing. And I literally am just blessed every single day that yesterday I filmed 6 videos, and I was like, all right, film 6. I'm taking the day off, and I didn't because I still had plenty of other work to do.
Yeah,
Another big
of
thing I'm
course.
working on that I'm really excited about is turning video game songs into like little piano reductions, and then pairing them with classical pieces, and having people come on and guess what's a video game and what's classical music.
Amazing.
So I'm working on that
That's
now, and I have
amazing.
someone that's doing that for me. So yeah, so that I'm just trying to always just evolve. So yeah, that's what's going on now
Cool.
into the
Well,
new year.
I certainly look forward to that personally, and I hope anyone watching keeps an eye out for that as well. Where can people find you and support what you do, Marco?
Yeah, you can check me out. I post excessively on X and slash Twitter. I am all over YouTube, Marco Meatball, and Twitch. And yeah, I multi-stream twice a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays, pretty much all day. So feel free to
Perfect.
come hang out. Yeah,
Well, I
thanks a
know
ton. I
you.
really appreciate it.
Sounds like you had a busy day yesterday, so I appreciate you making time for me today to have this sit
Of
down.
course, of course.
Super stoked to have you. Like I said, I could talk about video game music, all day long. So super appreciate that. And yeah, I'll make sure everyone knows where they can find you. And yeah, we'll. I'm sure I'll be sending you some random messages once I see some of those videos come up, or if I just have a musical fact that I want to share
I'd
with
love
you.
that. Yes, please do. I'd love that. I'd love that. Thank
Right
you so
on.
much for having me too. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks to everyone for watching. Make
See you,
sure you
everybody.
follow Marco, and yeah, we'll see you on the next one.
Bye.